If you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat box and I will bring them to Tommy's attention at the end of the webinar. We'll have a quick Q&A. And if you we will be giving out a quick survey for you to do at the end of the webinar. We would really appreciate your feedback. Our webinar today is about biosecurity, and it is presented to us by Tommy Bass of Montana State University. So thank you very much. Okay, Tommy.
Well, good morning and good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to say hello quickly and then turn off my video to try and maximize computer resources to push through this PowerPoint. So hi, and I'm going to turn that video off. Okay. So today we have an introduction to biosecurity, kind of within the case study of some of the work I have done with HPAI. Here on the intro slide, I just want to point out and explain some of these images. We have what is a typical PPE situation for avian influenza: gloves, boots, Tyvek or disposable suits of another material, and then an N95 respirator. That's what the protocol calls for. And these other images are of the cleaning and disinfection that's required of any equipment, vehicles, tools that may come in and out of an infected premises. So at any rate, let's kind of jump on into some framing here. Oh, geez. Excuse me, but now it is not. There we go. Okay, my computer's woken up. So a foreign animal disease response is community-wide. We recognize that when there is an FAD, that it can impact farms, families, communities, and then regions and beyond, right? Like avian influenza is all over the globe. And then biosecurity, these protocols can result in restricted movement and restricted behavior orders and recommendations across broad geographic areas. And that statement will come to make more sense as we move through. I also want to point out that regardless of biosecurity, that all program areas and extension can be engaged in a foreign animal disease outbreak. So of course, in agriculture and natural resources, we may have specific species knowledge, specific management expertise. You know, this could be coming from a variety of disciplines of science within our ag and natural resources areas. There are implications for youth and 4-H programming, both for their own flock and herd management. Folks are going to have to make show and fair decisions. That would also be in conjunction with the animal health authority or veterinary authority of the area. And then I will note that from a preparedness standpoint, you know, there are 4-H and youth projects out there to look at ways communities could be prepared for these sorts of events. Under family and consumer sciences, there could be roles in coordinating responder feeding. You know, a lot of times at these events, all the different responders may be out in very rural areas, working long hours. And so, you know, they may need, nourishment to conduct the duties that the responders have. And then because these diseases, we know they impact large commercial farms, small farms alike, but there are employment implications that can lead to household food and financial security issues. So there's a lot of, you know, education and consulting that family and consumer science can do, as well as community development. And just a quick example, you know, in Iowa this past year, when some of these large egg farms shut down production and moved into managing the outbreak, many, if not all of the daily workers were furloughed. And so there was, you know, significant employment and financial security implications within these communities. And then once again, there are other roles that local government may play, even if the state veterinarian or USDA is in charge of the response. And so, community development programming could prepare local governments for what to do in one of these events. And also during this presentation, I want you to think about, as we learn more about biosecurity, how might your personal life or your job and extension work be impacted when there are stop movement orders or reduced movement throughout an area. Think about places you may go where that could pose a danger to spreading the pathogen or the disease of concern. Something I would point out is meeting places, rural cafes, the feed store. These are places where people may interact and unknowingly transmit a pathogen. Most of today's presentation is really in the context of my role as a compost subject matter expert who works when there are animal disasters with mass animal mortalities. And many extension specialists and agents have become certified compost SMEs for USDA APHIS and within their own home states. I'll also mention that in many foreign animal disease outbreaks, composting may be chosen as the primary method of carcass and condemned material disposal. So what other materials am I talking about? It could be manure and litter, condemned feed, other byproducts that are on the farm, or food products that are on the farm. For example, eggs that might have been exposed to the virus that are already harvested and packaged. Those eggs need to go into the disposal system, into the composting system. And just a quick primer and 5 bullet points. Composting takes organic waste mixed with clean carbon and a site-specific design and a site-specific formulation of mixing these materials. And then there's performance monitoring and time benchmarks so that, at the end of the first month, let's say in an HPAI example, you have a pretty homogeneous compost mixture after the process is done correctly that will eventually be safe to be released and used as organic fertilizer, soil amendment, etc. And if we look at this image here, this is the start of a pile, a clean carbon base, a mix of birds and litter, maybe some condemned feed. And then this will be capped with clean carbon cap. And then we end up with something that looks like this. And this is several acres, about 12 miles of compost windrows. You see it steaming in the early morning because of the heat that's being released that's generated by this composting process when designed properly. And this is an actual image of temperature taking in these windrows. So this is an example of 140 degrees Fahrenheit at 36 inches deep in one of these windrows. Okay, so here's the biosecurity primer within this context. And this presentation was originally prepared for a series of courses that myself and colleagues, I should say led by colleagues at Maine Cooperative Extension and assisted by myself, colleagues at Washington State University, Washington State Department of Ag. We put on trainings last summer to prepare more subject matter experts to go out and work these disasters. And biosecurity is one of the first things a subject matter expert needs to learn before they enter a response. So in disaster response, we should recognize that biosecurity, disaster response, and environmental management are all intertwined because they have these 4 goals. They promote environmental health, promote or protect environmental health, public health, food and companion animal health, and wildlife health. And biosecurity is simply the actions that we take to prevent or control diseases of animals and humans. I think we are all well versed over the last 3 years of increasing a daily biosecurity habit, which is washing our hands throughout the day, right? And then as diseases and different events escalate, we have many, many layers of more complex biosecurity. So biocontainment is containing the pathogen on an infected premises, right? So this is a known farm with the disease, and we don't want that disease to leave that farm. And then bioexclusion is preventing the introduction of the pathogen to a farm that is uninfected and what we would call naive animals. They have not been exposed to that disease. So containment, keeping it on the infected farm, bioexclusion, keeping it out of uninfected farms. And just a couple basic definitions. Of course, a pathogen is a disease-causing microorganism. We already said biosecurity are those procedures to protect humans or animals against pathogens. A vector, okay, is an organism that carries a pathogen to its host. So that would be, you know, a wild bird, a rodent, certain insects, other nuisance animals, you know, coyotes and whatnot that may get an infected carcass and take it somewhere and expose it. Fomites are non-living objects capable of carrying pathogens. So what we think of here is your boots, your shoes, tools that are shared between farms, equipment that could be shared between farms. So a vector for a disease is another living organism, and a fomite is a non-living object. Okay, so subject matter experts are consultants or experts within the incident command system, and they provide detailed support on specific issues. They're credentialed or vetted by some professional means. And what I want you to notice here, in this just generic basic format, is over here in operations. So this is about a lot of things getting done. And this is where the disposal group and the compost subject matter experts exist, as well as the disease support branch. And this is where the animal biosecurity and disease prevention group sits, and they set the appropriate biosecurity protocols for the event. Okay, so when you are a subject matter expert, you're called to come help with the response to a disease. And in the case of myself as a compost SME, I'll virtually or literally check in with the incident command, case manager, or site manager. Say, hey, I've driven in or I've flown in from wherever. I'm in the region. I'm ready to take my assignment and start visiting the farms assigned to me. And I'll request the biosecurity protocols specific to the incident, the site, and the pathogen. And prior to arrival, I would have requested appropriate PPE be shipped to my hotel or shipped to my home, and I could carry it with me, or to pick it up perhaps at a supply cache that's part of the response. Also ahead of time, I had the fit test for my respirator. Even with a simple N95, which we are all very familiar with now due to COVID, you still need a fit test to make sure that it's working correctly and that you are healthy and safe to work long days and rough conditions with the respirator on. And then the take-home point here is any subject matter expert or responder is going to follow the biosecurity protocols set for the incident. Now, once we arrive on site, and I mean an individual farm, we would park in a designated clean side staging area. So I want you to imagine, and we'll see images in a moment, you know, of a line of separation around this farm. Inside is the hot zone, outside is the clean or cold zone. Now, sometimes when you show up to, say, a smaller, medium poultry operation, maybe broilers or turkeys, you may be a very early visitor to that site. It may not be all set up. Check in with the case manager, verify where a line of separation may be if it's not apparent. It could be the farm gate, it could be a piece of flagging or tape. And right here is where you start your process of putting on your PPE and where you will take it off and leave it when you exit. And a lot of these smaller farms may not have a formal line of separation. And then large farms or infected premises will have an obvious line of separation. We have some examples. So these are examples of a Danish entry. It may be part of the farm's biosecurity in general, or it may be built up temporarily during the disease response. For example, I worked one operation that bought 5 garden sheds with entrances on either side that they put up on the line of separation. You shed on the clean side, and then changed into your PPE and everything, stepped over a bench and into the hot zone. So that line actually went through that shed. And then you would doff all of your PPE, leave that PPE on the dirty side, step back over the bench, get some extra light spray down on your clothes once the PPE was shed, step back into your clean shoes, which stayed on the other side, and then exit again. And this system with the bench, swing over, step over, is called the Danish entry. So when a subject matter expert or a responder that has to go into the hot zone arrives in the vehicle, we'd want our PPE already, duct tape to seal up cuffs, and sleeves over gloves and booties, disinfectant spray and wipes, and that can be just commercially available stuff, Lysol spray, wipes, etc. Disinfectant liquid concentrate, that would be in a spray bottle or a garden sprayer, and that's just to continue to like spray down those boots, spray down different parts of your work clothes, even though they were previously under PPE. A bucket and a brush to clean organic matter off of anything and disinfect that. Clean water, paper towels, Ziploc bags and trash bags are very important. And then, you're traveling from farm to farm, a plastic storage tub in your personal vehicle or rental vehicle just helps keep you organized. And a cheap mat or rug, so that you have something clean to stand on, something that you can disinfect, and just helps with those transitions from clean boots to dirty boots, or getting that PPE off and the dirty overshoes and pulling your clean shoes out of that, etc. And this is what it looks like. Once you've donned all that PPE on the clean side, you need to leave all non-essential personal items on the clean side. You enter that hot zone, stepping over the line of separation, whether it's spray painted line, tape, cable at a farm gate, or a bench in the context of the Danish entry, and you conduct your work. And I'll just point out in this image, you need to leave all non-essential personal items on the clean side. However, you may need a few things to do your job, and I Ziploc or duct tape on a Ziploc cargo pocket to my Tyvek. And in there, I have my phone, which in this case, the phone is necessary for the work. You may need it to take notes. You certainly need it to take certain pictures and observations. I would have a box cutter in there just to use as a utility knife for different reasons. A Sharpie. One thing you can do is take notes on your sleeve, on your Tyvek suit, and then you can photograph that or have somebody photograph that before you take that PPE off and leave those dirty clothes on the hot side. Minimizing fomites. Okay, so these are those objects, tools, inanimate objects. You're going to have some tools for your compost work, in my case, that need to be left inside. So your probe thermometer is a good example. Maybe some sort of shovel to dig in and inspect piles. Once you bring those necessary tools in, they'll stay inside for the duration of the response. Because weather can be hot or cold, wet or dry, you may need some environmental personal protection just for the weather. So sun hats, warm hats, etc. Though they'll be covered with PPE, you still should consider disinfecting them with Lysol spray as you come out. Prescription glasses are necessary. Once again, they'll be disinfected when you come out. And then you may need warm work gloves underneath a couple layers of rubber gloves. When you depart a site, leaving the hot zone, I mentioned, you sort of start to reverse over this line of separation. All of the PPE is left in a trash can or bag on the hot side, and it will be dealt with appropriately later on. These potential fomites, your glasses, your phone, maybe some work aids or tools that have to come out, they have to go through a disinfection process. And this whole process does require some minor gymnastics as you strip down from head to toe and get out of the dirty PPE and bring that clean foot around to the other side onto a clean mat, into clean cold side boots, etc. So you do have to have a little bit of flexibility. So some tips for responders coming onto a farm. You need to have all these supplies we've already discussed, and you need to be prepared to deal with donning, doffing, and disinfection on your own. At the large sites, there will be assistants to help you do all of this. But if you show up, at a single turkey farm or broiler farm, it may not have a full 24-hour set of responders on site. So you're going to have to do all of this on your own and follow the protocols. I often will be prepared with cheap or even disposable work clothes and different supplies. I may go to a thrift store or dollar store when I arrive in an area, particularly if I flew, and just to get some things that, if my PPE was damaged and my sweatshirt was exposed, I could just throw it away and not take something potentially infected off that farm. I usually take my oldest pair of shoes and boots. Of course, they're going to be inside booties or dirty side over boots, but I still just throw those old shoes away at the end of a deployment. I don't even think about taking them back to my home base in any way. And then once again, you may need a tool like a pocket knife throughout your day, but I just get a cheap box cutter at the dollar store and use that instead of a nice pocket knife. And also a box cutter is helpful in getting out of your PPE sometimes if you've duct tape things too tightly and whatnot. So once a responder, whether you're a compost SME or some other sort of responder, once you are working on infected farms, you do not go to any clean or disease-free or what we call naive premises, right? So even though you may have to go back to your hotel and whatnot, and you've left all the dirty clothes and PPE at the site, and you are disinfected going across the line of separation, you absolutely do not go to any clean farms or disease-free farms. You don't return to any premises considered clear of the disease post-cleaning and disinfection or during the fallow period of rest after disinfection. It's also important, even though your vehicle is going to stay on the clean side, periodically wash it. There's a lot of movement throughout the region when there are lots of infected farms. Life has to go on, even though there are many infected farms in a region. And then you will follow the animal health authority's recommendations on times and protocols for visiting any other farm in the aftermath of your service. When you return back to your day job as an extension agent or specialist or some other ag or natural resource consultant, you need to follow the animal health authority's recommendations on wait times and any other safety and biosecurity protocols before you visit another farm. So also on regional movement and control, this is a generic image here, but it represents what basically a 10-kilometer zone would look like around an infected farm. And it's not a perfect circle, it's an odd shape because it would take into consideration the roadways and whatnot. But sometimes you'll see this image as a perfect circle, but it might not represent how people actually travel on the available infrastructure. But we have these different zones that the disease control group and those epidemiologists, they would establish, and there's different things going on here in this tiered control area. I just want to introduce you to this concept, but it's not the specific point of this presentation. But just imagine a region with a bunch of infected farms, how those concentric circles of control would look like with infected zones, buffer zones, surveillance zones, etc. Okay. When you think about securing a farm and making it as biosecure as possible, these are some things to think about. As much as possible or practicable, you need to secure the site from vandals and trespassers. The site also needs to be secured and have a system in place for dealing with media. You need to have the farm as secure from scavengers and nuisance animals as possible. Obviously, we're working on large landscapes, rural areas, but those scavengers and nuisance animals can be what? They can be vectors, right? You need to secure the site from other food animals, grazing animals that may get through a fence or whatever, and secure from wildlife as much as possible. And these images are just some examples of ongoing signs that that farms and ranches may need to have just to try and slow down access, prevent access to the site in regular times, but especially during disease outbreak. All right, so here's an example of an actual facility that was dealing with an outbreak. And what we see here is the interior of the farm, and the first big red box, the largest red box, represents hot zone inside, the red line of separation to the clean or cold zone outside. And then in this case, composting was done on an adjacent leased field. So condemned materials and whatnot could leave the main interior of the farm into this annex of the hot zone, and that would be where all the composting took place. Now we have to cross a county section road here, and so concrete Jersey barriers were set up where these stop signs are. So basically, there was no clean traffic that could accidentally drive right through the middle of this hot zone, both the farm interior and the annex. And then the blue box is where there was clean carbon, clean equipment staging. It was the cold zone. So as manure, birds, etc., was brought from the interior of the farm to the composting annex here, clean carbon could be loaded over the line of separation, pushed across the line of separation, but this blue box stayed clean, okay? And then there were other pieces of equipment in here to grab the clean carbon and build those compost windrows. There are many options for this sort of, region immediately around the farm. So, you would engage county DOT, state DOT, county or state law enforcement, anybody who would have equipment and the authority to close these roads to prevent anybody from accidentally driving into a hot zone, especially where these county roads split farms. So signage and freestanding barricades. I mentioned the concrete jersey barriers that we used on that one operation, but also use what you have available in these areas. Round bales or large square bales, they can make excellent roadblocks. Responder and staff parking is important. It's on the cold side, of course, and we need to think about setbacks and convenience, because workers, responders have to get to the site. They need somewhere safe to park. However, we're dealing in a natural environment. There could be dust, aerosols, liquid droplets that could come off of the farm, because of wind, weather, turning operations, that could drift over this sort of, once you get up in the air, imaginary line of separation and land on vehicles, right? So that's what I mean on the setback versus convenience issue. You might want to consider shuttling if necessary. If there's not safe cold zone parking, you may need to meet at a remote site, all responders and contractors and service workers, and then shuttle in by bus. Once again, that's just to reduce that cross-contamination of dust and aerosols and liquid droplets onto too many vehicles. And there may be additional requirements per the incident commander, the animal health authority, the producer may have extra biosecurity they want people to practice, and that will be honored. Same with an integrator. A poultry company, a hog company with many sites, they may have their own additional biosecurity recommendations. So everything I just said, this is what this may look like. This is an actual responded to operation. We see the red line of separation here. This is, of course, the hot zone. Composting operations, I'll let you know, are on an adjacent area inside the hot zone. But we had an opportunity here at the scale house of this big farm to build a Danish entry inside the scale house. So responders, workers coming in would go through that process. And there was an equipment wash, a C&D station, cleaning and disinfection. So, for example, we had some skid steers break down. They had to leave, even though they'd been handling this material. So they were washed down, disinfected, left the facility to go to a repair shop. And all of that happened right here. There was limited permitted parking on the cold zone for managers and responders, but laborers and service workers were bussed in and dropped off, right? So that was to avoid just having too much traffic, too many vehicles, and in the end, to promote fewer chances for that aerosol, dust, water, liquid droplet cross-contamination. So here's just that image again of, some sort of farm dump or roll-off truck being disinfected. Any piece of equipment that comes into the infected premises is going to require a permit from within the response structure. And that's just knowing what is coming and going across this line, okay? There's a check-in and check-out procedure for the SMEs and other responders, as well as all of that equipment. And then, of course, cleaning and disinfection at different levels, from equipment to individuals. So it's also important to recognize that compost SMEs or other responders or subject matter experts will not really be making biosecurity decisions about the premises. All right, that's going to be set by the animal health authority, and it's going to be appropriate to the scale and scope of the event and the type of pathogen and any other additional environmental concerns. As a compost SME, for example, you may advise on movement of equipment and materials and even infrastructure for composting activities. For example, there is a farm where, in order to access a field for composting activities, we had to order several semi-loads of gravel and a culvert to make a temporary road over the borrow ditch and into that field. So you may request materials and equipment and all of that flow of people, equipment, materials is going to be subject to the biosecurity protocols of the event. So in summary of this slide, just obtain and follow the protocols for personal, farm, and regional level biosecurity that are provided to you by the experts and the Animal Health Authority. Some other sort of personal safety as well as social issues to consider, not just compost SMEs, but any sort of responder going into one of these events, whether it's a family poultry farm with 4 or 6 houses, or a large corporate commercial farm with many sites and large facilities. You're going to be working in busy places, lots of equipment moving around, dangerous places, dust, heat, confined spaces, etc. Unfamiliar places. These are other people's farms, other companies' farms. So you always need to have eyes in the back of your head so that you don't get hit with a piece of equipment, run over by something, knock your head on something, etc. Now, as far as the people you're going to be working with, they're great people. Your colleagues, the farms you're working on, but you have to realize everybody is stressed out. Everybody is tired. People are going to be emotional just due to the stress and fatigue, but also due to thinking about the loss of their livelihood, or a large farm having to lay off a bunch of employees, people they've relied on and taken care of. You're going to be working with a lot of other professionals and people with good ideas. And you're also going to be working with inexperienced people and people that may need to be guided along to understand everything that's going on and needs to be happening. So with that, I hope that this has been going smoothly. I'm going to pose these questions and then I'm going to back out of share and try and get back to the video. So maybe we can have a little bit of a discussion. So any other fellow responders on this call? I'd love to hear your questions, comments, insights, or corrections. Any extension administrators who might have concerns about extension faculty and staff being involved in something like this and how biosecurity may affect other operations of the extension service. And then all of the colleagues and attendees who are here and took the time to listen to me, ask me questions, share your thoughts, experiences, or once again, offer me any corrections, on your take for the presentation. All right. Thanks so much. And I'm back. I'm looking at Hollywood Squares here. So I see there's a lot in the chat. I hope that wasn't saying that my slides were failing throughout because I could not see. Claire, do you want to maybe help manage the chat? I can take a look as well.
Sure, right now, no questions posed in the chat, and yes, your slides were wonderful. No issues there. So if there are any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or just ask away.
Is that a good question coming in? I'm unsure. I heard some chatter. Oh no, let's see. All right, folks, feel free to be jumping in. Can hear but cutting out. I hope that got resolved. Any other experiences to share? Has anybody had their extension work impacted by foreign animal disease controls within their area? And has anybody responded into a foreign animal disease situation? Excellent. Looks like Julianne. Yeah, some emergency backups, right? And you also can think about sometimes on multi-layer, like the grocery bag could be over a sneaker, and then you have the appropriate provided PPE over that. Just adds an extra layer that's quite helpful. And one thing I would mention is shoe covers or having a boot disinfection kit in your vehicle really should become common extension practice when you're going on farms. I always ask a producer if they have any biosecurity concerns, particularly in certain species, hog farms, poultry farms, things like that. We're dealing with ranches and range cattle. Biosecurity is a little more fuzzy, right? Because it's all out in the open air and adjacent pastures and fields and whatnot. But a lot of times too, I'll just tell the producer, like, hey, for your protection and mine, I'm gonna, wear shoe covers. I want to let you know I brought clean, disinfected boots to your farm or ranch today, just as a protection for all of us and as a professional courtesy. So that's a minimum step we can be taking as part of extension professionalism and biosecurity. Well, if there's no other questions or comments, I've been known to just ramble on in the uncomfortable silence, but otherwise I can say thank you, and please follow up with me early on in the